review this game. So the game started with Queen's Gambit decline, Bishop to G5, Bishop to E7. We are on pin the knight. Knight B D7. So we connected knights, and also we still leave some space for the C pawn. Alternatively, we can also push the pawn to kick the bishop and also solve our background problem ahead. And if bishop back to h4, we can play b6, move the bishop first, and we can play c5 before moving the knight. So the thing is, imagine if we have the c pawn at c5, maybe we can also move that to c6. So we don't have to move the knight right now. So we can have some flexibility later on. So yeah, we can also play b6. Yeah, bishop is at c5, and then knight b d7. So usually white will move the rook to control the c file, and then we can move the bishop. And if I take the pawn, we can take with the knight, because we are attacking the bishop. White cannot push e4, and if white take our bishop, we can take it up with the queen. And if e4, we can exchange. If rook takes, we can take e4 pawn, and pawn takes, we can also take e4 pawn. So if knight take our knight, we can take it up with the pawn, and there's a semi-open file, and also we can push the c pawn. And once our pawn is pushed, we can move the knight to c6 or d7, and we can decide later on. So knight b d7 is not a problem. I'm just suggesting some other alternative plans. So bishop to d3, exchange c5, attack the center, that's good. And castle, a6, and a4, white stops us playing b5. And b6, so here we play b6, and white can push the d pawn, and white will have a very good control of the d file in the center. And that's also the thing why I was mentioning we don't have to move knight to d7 very early, because the knight blocks the d file, so we don't have the queen controlling d5. So imagine we don't have the knight at d7, it will become harder for white to push the pawn, and also we can be quicker to push this pawn and develop this bishop. So my point is, if we look at these two pieces, so usually we need to solve the development of the bishop first, and later the knight, because the knight always have one more choice, either c6 or d7, than the bishop. So usually only have one good position for the bishop, that is b7. So we can solve this one first, and then think about the knight. So here we want to develop the bishop, but the knight blocks the d file. So in this case, so exchanging with the pawn could be the good choice. So if white take the pawn with the center pawn, the d4, so this is a center pawn, but it's isolated. So which means the d5 could be a square we can control. So for example, knight b6, and later we can move the knight to d5. And this is also consistent with our previous moves, which is develop the knight. So we can move the knight to best position first. And yeah, so this is what I've said, this is what I mean of consistent. Move the knight and then move it to center, instead of placing it at d7, blocking our d file. So b6, and white played d5, that's the best move. So as I said, white has a very good control of the center, and we move rook to a7, and if we move to b8, I think bishop f4 is coming. So yeah, bishop a7 looks fine, and it supported knight, so the knight become a little bit awkward at the d file. So exchange, rook to d1, this is the open file, and white has control of this file, so white is slightly better. and we move rook to c7. Can we just move knight to f6, develop knight, and kick the queen? I think the problem is if queen d6, it's very hard for us to protect b6 because our knight is moved. So yeah, so this is a bit awkward. Rook c7, queen d6, that's a good move, and we have to trade. So yeah, so our knight is stuck at d7 to protect the pawn. We lost the control of the d file, so white is active than us, and we need to defend. So for example, maybe rook e6 is something, rook e8 and later rook e6 something we can consider. Or maybe move the king out to, no, e7 is not good because bishop knight d5, apparently. So what can we do? Rook e6, change, but we will have a isolated pawn, and also rook d6 still attacking our two pawns. And if king f7, knight g5, yeah, that's not good. So king f8, white could play, maybe white solve the background pawn with knight g5, and h6, knight can go to e4. And now I can offer a trade. I later move king to e7. Like this. Now we can play king e7. We can protect the pawn. And then we can move knight to f6. I mean, we can maybe exchange with the rook first and move the knight out. Yeah, so this is how we could solve this problem. Bishop d7, rook d1. Yeah, how can we deal with the knight? I think we'll end up losing a pawn. We take the, okay, so I think white can take our bishop, and we need to move the knight. If knight e5, so rook takes, take, king up, knight back, and we will lose another one. And white will have up one pawn and also pawn majority at the queen side. So in this game, I think white didn't take the bishop, it took the knight. That's a mistake, because after the exchange, first of all, black has remained the bishop, which is usually better than the knight in the open game, and also the rook moved from d6 to d7. It's a little bit off the target of the b6 pawn. Move the bishop back and move it to a8. So for now, I think black is safer than the previous position because we didn't lose anything. Even though the bishop is passive, it still controls these two squares where the knight can go to, and also a bishop is potentially better than a knight in the open position. So f3, I think white is going to build a wall to face against the bishop. h6, h7. Why don't we control the open file? Even though we cannot take the pawn, but it's also always good to control the open file, I think. And king to h7, we want to activate the king. So white has pawn majority at the king side. So this position white is better because, as I said, white has pawn majority at king side, which means white can have create a pass pawn at the king side, and also the pawn have higher position than black pawn. So which means white king could be more active than our king, and the pawn can keep pushing to push the king back to 7th rank, for example. And also the rook is also active than our rook. It attacks two pieces. So one, our king have to protect the f7, and our rook have to protect the bishop. So yeah, so this is very passive for us, and we don't have a very good square for the bishop, because even though we move bishop to c6, for example, it will be kicked. For example, rook c7, and we'll still have to move bishop back to a8. So f4, f6. So the problem with f6 is we still have weakness like g7, and also our king doesn't have f6 to escape. So for example, if pawn to f5, our king has to go back to h7. I mean, white don't have to push the pawn right now. Maybe h4 and then f5. We have to move the king back to h7, which is a very passive place. So what we can do instead is maybe move the king to f6. And white cannot play knight d5 to kick our king because our bishop is guarding the square. And if, for example, e5, we can move the king to e6 to activate the king. And also our bishop is a little bit like free, a little bit more free. And if we can move the bishop away, and probably we can offer an exchange. And also if the bishop is free, we can also move the rook. So yeah, so this is how we can activate the king to the center. So the king can defend, also guarding these squares, also guarding the pawn. It's better than being placed at the g6. But after f6, we cannot move the king to the king side anymore. Okay, bishop, back, h4. Yeah, white pushed basically all the pawns to 4th rank at the king side. And after pushing the pawn, the king can go to f4 and then offer an exchange. So the purpose of white is clear. It's going to make a passed pawn, and also forcing these two pieces and the king stay at where they are. So rook d4. So if rook a7, I think we still need to move the rook back to d8, right? If bishop to c6 and rook c8, rook c8 and rook b8. Okay, and we can play rook to d7. Okay, never mind. So maybe chasing the bishop is not the best choice, but white can push the pawn, as I said. And we have to move king to h7. And what about king to f4? If we move rook to d2, and we can attack the bishop and win the pawn. And if we move rook back to d7, g5, take. If you don't take, I will push and mate at the background. If you take, I can take. Then I have a very, very dangerous pass pawn. And also these two pawns are connected. I don't think black has a way to stop the pawn, because the knight can reach to g6, for example, to and also yeah, f6. The king can go to f6. So I think white is winning once it creates a passed pawn. But let's look at what the players made the decision. h5. This is less good as f5, because where white can create a pass pawn is pushing the e pawn. And after push h5, so if you play e5, even though white has a pass pawn, it's not connected. So yeah. So now I think, and also we can take g4. So now I think that the position became very close to equalized. e6, rook g5. So I think rook g3 is also we can consider. Rook f3, check. If you move here, I can check back. If you move here, and I can play bishop f3. I can win this pawn and guarding this square. This is a light square, and the position is equalized. So yeah, it involves a lot calculations here. Rook g5. So now if king f4, our rook can go back So we'll waste one move. Maybe we need to go to G1, and it will waste one move. And also, even though we take H5, our bishop is not activated. If we take H5 with the rook, our bishop is still a problem. So rook G1, E7, rook E1. So actually, if knight B5 and knight D6, so our bishop is stuck at here. It cannot go to F3. So if knight B5, for example, check the king, and the king go to. Actually, it doesn't have go to. I mean, I think it's also fine. Okay. Oh, there is a skewer. So we can still play bishop F3 and take this pawn. You cannot promote, but the king can go to G3. If you attack, king F2, I can guard E1, and I will have a queen. And if you go here, well, E1, knight D6 come in. So white, okay, so white, okay, white like one bishop, and black has up 2 pawns. White is still winning, I think, but it's a little bit hard, and white has to be aware of all the pawns. Be cautious. Knight, rook E7. So actually, knight E5 is the best move. If you black take the pawn, knight F4, what white is doing is building a net checkmate. If you check king, I can play. Oh no, this is losing a rook. Now if we rook G to pin the knight, for example, knight F5, if you take this one here, and this is unstoppable. So white play another move instead and lost the pawn, knight D5, but this is a little bit slow. You don't have a rook at A8. Okay, white is preparing. This will checkmate, but it's easier to defend. King J, that's a good move, and then our king can go out. And now the game, I think, become equalized again. Exchange all the pawns. That's a very good strategy to simplify the game, to make it a draw. Great, and then we offer exchange, and that's a draw. That's it.